While some symbiotic fungi are beneficial for their host, others are parasitic and take nutrients or even harm their host without providing any benefits. You may recognize this image if you watched the show The Last of Us. Fortunately, there is not yet a fungus that can turn humans into zombies. But there are fungi that affect other animals in ways that are almost as dramatic as the fungus in this show. And there are many fungi that can affect the human body. The fungus in The Last of Us is actually based on a real fungus that infects insects. Just like in the show, it affects the insect's behavior, causing it to do things it normally wouldn't do to help the fungus reproduce and spread. Once the cordyceps fungus infects the brain of its host, it alters the insect's behavior, causing it to climb upwards to a high point that will be best for spore dispersal. The insect then latches onto a stem or leaf, and the fungus sprouts its fruiting body or mushroom, releasing spores that can infect other insects in the area. So again, thank goodness there are no fungus that can exert mind control on humans like that. But there are many fungi that can be detrimental to human health. Fungi are extremely diverse and abundant. There are fungal spores floating all around us in the air right now. Each breath you take in probably contains millions of fungal spores. It's why we can make sourdough bread starter by leaving flour with some sugar and water out and letting it naturally colonize with fungi from the air. But it's also how our food gets contaminated with molds if you leave it out too long. Most of these fungal spores are harmless, but some can irritate allergies or even produce neurotoxins that can make us sick. There are many fungi that are parasitic on humans and can cause health problems. Most of these live externally, usually in areas that are moist and don't receive a lot of light, like the feet and body crevices. However, there are also some fungi that can infect internal structures of the human body. One example is candidiasis, which is caused by an infection with Candida yeast. Candida are common on the skin and usually don't cause any health issues. However, Candida yeast can be problematic and cause disease when its growth gets out of control or invades internal tissues. Some examples of diseases caused by Candida yeast are vaginal candidiasis, or vaginal yeast infections. People with weakened immune systems may also be at risk of oral candidiasis, which is also known as thrush. In some cases, Candida yeast can cause a widespread infection of the blood and organs, known as invasive candidiasis. There are also several fungi that can infect our skin. You may have heard of ringworm, which is actually not caused by a worm. It's caused by a fungus, the Tinea fungus, and it causes an itchy rash. Athlete's foot is also caused by Tinea fungi, so it's basically ringworm of the feet. Like many parasitic fungi, it lives in dark, moist environments, so sweaty feet are a perfect breeding ground for it. To prevent athlete's foot, you should keep your feet clean and dry and change your socks and shoes often. Fungi can also infect human finger and toenails. These infections are usually harmless and just an aesthetic issue, but in some cases it can cause some discomfort or even lead to loss of the nail. The fungi that cause nail infections, as well as athlete's foot, are contagious and can be spread in places like public showers. Most people don't have to worry too much about serious fungal infections, but when the immune system is weakened, it can be harder to fight their growth and spread. For example, oral thrush, which again is caused by a candida fungus that's common on the skin, is common in patients with HIV infection whose immune systems are weakened. Now pause the video and answer this participation question from Participation Assignment 6. And also this question. But in addition to the many fungi that can infect the human body, there are also many fungi that are beneficial to human health. For example, the first antibiotic, penicillin, was extracted from a fungus. And the antibiotic properties of this fungus were discovered somewhat accidentally. A scientist named Alexander Fleming was growing bacteria in the lab on culture plates. One day, he noticed that a mold had contaminated some of his plates. Interestingly, he also noticed that no bacteria grew around these colonies of mold. He later discovered that the mold was producing antibiotics, and the antibiotic penicillin was extracted from this mold. When we talked about bacteria, we talked about the importance of the ecosystem of microorganisms in our gut, known as our microbiome. But the microbiome is not just made up of bacteria. There are also many beneficial fungi present. And of course, the mushrooms of fungi are also a part of our diets. But we also use fungi to make many different fermented foods. As you probably know, yeasts are used to make bread, beer, and wine. We also use fungi to make soy sauce and some cheeses. Now pause again and answer this participation question. And here's the last question in Participation Assignment 6.